The South China Sea. Somewhere between the Paracel Islands and open water, a U.S. carrier strike group holds position at the edge of a contested zone. The outer picket, a single Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, sits 80 nautical miles ahead of the carrier, radar sweeping, watching a contact that has been tracking northwest for the last 40 minutes. That contact is a Type 055 destroyer, one of the most capable surface combatants ever built. And right now, it is about to make a decision that looks like strength and feels like dominance, but is actually the opening move in its own defeat. This is a hypothetical scenario, built from real capabilities for education and analysis. Nothing here is a confirmed event. Everything here is how these systems actually work. Here is the question at the center of this breakdown. When you have the most powerful air search radar in the Pacific and you turn it on, do you own the electromagnetic spectrum, or do you just become the loudest thing in it? By the end of this, you will know exactly why those are not the same thing. And you will understand why the Type 055's commander, in this scenario, is about to learn that lesson the hard way. Let's set the board. The carrier strike group has a layered defense. Closest in, the carrier itself. USS Gerald R. Ford sits at the center with its own AN/SPY-6 radar and a ring of SM-6 interceptors. The outer picket, the forward Arleigh Burke, is the tripwire. Its job is to see threats early, cue weapons, and absorb the first wave of targeting attention from any adversary. It is not supposed to fight alone. It is supposed to be the first link in a kill chain. Overhead and out of sight, an E-2D Hawkeye orbits at altitude, its massive rotodome turning slowly, fusing tracks from across the entire operational area and pushing them down. Link 16 to every platform in the group. And on the far edge of the picture, two assets that the Type 055 commander almost certainly knows are out here somewhere. A P-8A Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft and an EA-18G Growler are holding their positions and saying absolutely nothing on the electromagnetic spectrum. Passive, silent, watching. The Type 055 carries the Type 346B active phased array radar, a system designed to track over 300 targets simultaneously and illuminate for anti-ship missiles at ranges pushing 300 kilometers. That is a real and serious capability. Against most opponents, it would be decisive. The thinking behind this maneuver, light the radar, push the picket sensor picture back, assert electromagnetic dominance over the lane, and open a window for a long-range anti-ship strike, is not stupid thinking. It is muscle thinking. It is the logic of the biggest transmitter in the room. What the muscle mindset misses is what the Growler is built to exploit. At 0347 local time, the Type 055 goes active. The Type 346B lights up across the S-band and X-band simultaneously, a wall of radio frequency energy pushing outward at the speed of light. The power output is extraordinary. Think of it like this. Turning on that radar is the electromagnetic equivalent of lighting a stadium floodlight in a pitch-black field. From the outside, you cannot see anything in the glare. From the inside, you think you own the darkness. What you have actually done is made yourself visible to everyone standing outside the light. The Arleigh Burke's AN/SPY-6 radar is immediately swamped at the edges of its effective range. The Type 346B outranges the picket's own active sensor picture in the direction of the threat. For approximately 90 seconds, the destroyer's tactical display is degraded in that sector. Contacts fuzzy, tracks uncertain. The picket commander calls it up, links 16 to the Hawkeye and to the Ford. The emission is logged. Bearing, frequency, pulse repetition interval, scan rate, all of it. Every characteristic of that radar is now a data point. And the Growler pilot does not need to be told twice. Here is the obstacle the strike package faces, and it is real. The EA-18G Growler is carrying the AGM-88 HARM, the high-speed anti-radiation missile, configured for home-on-jam mode. To build a valid firing solution, the Growler needs the Type 055 to keep transmitting long enough for the ALQ-99 systems receivers to lock the emission fingerprint and compute a precise bearing. The Type 055 radar is powerful enough that a brief burst, 10-15 seconds, and then shutdown could theoretically deny a clean solution. The gamble the adversary is making right now is the assumption that U.S. forces need time to react. The reality is that the reaction already happened before the radar came on. The Growler has been passively cataloging every radar emission in this operating area for the last 2 hours. The Type 346B's fingerprint was already in the library. What the commander is doing right now is not powering up a radar. He is confirming his location. I spent time going through the technical literature on home-on-jam logic, and one detail kept pulling at me. The AGM-88 HARM in home-on-jam mode does not need the enemy radar to keep transmitting all the way to impact. It memorizes the last known bearing and continues on inertial guidance if the emitter goes dark. The window of vulnerability for the Type 055 is not just while it is transmitting. It is the entire flight time of the missile, up to 80 nautical miles, subsonic to supersonic, closing it over Mach 2. Going dark after the missile is in the air does not save you. It just means you cannot see it coming. The Growler's ALQ-99 system is, in the simplest terms, a set of extraordinarily sensitive ears. Where the Arleigh-Burke's radar sends out a beam and waits for a bounce, the ALQ-99 sends out nothing. It simply listens. And here is the mechanism that makes this asymmetry so brutal. A radar that is transmitting cannot hide its bearing. Physics does not allow it. The signal propagates in all directions simultaneously. The target sees it, yes, but so does everyone else within line of sight. The bearing of the emission is unambiguous. The frequency, pulse shape, and scan rate are unambiguous. You can know exactly where a radar is without being a radar yourself. The Growler turns the Type 055's own transmitted energy into a targeting line. At 0349, 2 minutes after the Type 346B came on, the Growler crew has a firing solution. The P-8A Poseidon has been cross-cueing a position track through its own passive sensors. The E-2D Hawkeye has correlated the tracks and pushed the fused picture down, link 16 to both the Growler and the Ford. The kill chain. P-8A feeds the track, Hawkeye fuses and distributes it. Growler holds the firing solution. Is complete. 4 platforms. 1 picture. Shared in real time across a data link that the Type 055 cannot jam without revealing its jamming emitter, which is also a targetable emission source. Most people assume the electronic warfare advantage in a modern naval engagement belongs to the side with the most powerful jamming transmitter. The evidence tells a different story. In a sensor war, the loudest voice is not the most powerful voice. It is the most locatable one. The Growler has not fired yet. And this is where the scenario turns into something more interesting than a simple missile shot. At 0350, the Growler crew transmits a single burst on a secure link 16 net, a targeting quality track flagged as time sensitive. On the Ford, the strike warfare coordinator sees it. On the E-2D, the battle management officer confirms the track is solid. The Type 055 has now been transmitting for 3 minutes and 40 seconds. Its radar has pushed the picket back, just as intended. The lane for a long-range anti-ship strike is, from the adversary's perspective, opening up. The commander may be preparing to cue a YJ-18 anti-ship missile package. The whole plan. Blind the picket with the radar, confirm the carrier's bearing, launch, and let the missiles do the rest. What the Type 055 commander does not know is that his radar, in the time it has been operating, has given the Growler crew enough data to build a complete emission fingerprint. Frequency agility pattern, pulse repetition intervals across all operating modes, side lobe structure. This is not just a firing solution for one harm. This is an intelligence product that will follow this specific hull for the rest of its operational life. Every time the ship turns on any radar system, US Navy electronic warfare assets will recognize it. Immediately, from the first pulse. Here is the uncomfortable math, and it is worth sitting with. The Type 055 is a $900 million warship. The AGM-88 HARM costs approximately $280,000 a round. The cueing pass by the Growler, the action that built the targeting solution, costs about $30,000 in flight hours and ordnance handling. That is the arithmetic of the sensor war. You do not need to outspend the adversary. You need to be smarter about what their spending reveals about their position. Put yourself in the Type 055 commander's position for a second. You have the most powerful surface search and air search radar in the theater. You have anti-ship missiles with ranges that outclass most of what the US picket can engage. On paper, you are holding the better hand. What you cannot account for is a platform that is not transmitting, that you cannot see on your own radar picture, that has been passively tracking your emissions for hours, and that is now holding a valid firing solution on your hull from 80 nautical miles away while you are still deciding whether to launch. At 0352, the Growler crew receives weapons release authority. The targeting solution is solid. The Type 346B is still up. The HARM is ready on the rail. And then, the Type 055 goes dark. The radar cuts. The tactical picture on the adversary's bridge collapses. Whatever they saw building, the Growler's data link activity, a change in the electronic order of battle, something in the emissions environment, was enough. The Type 346B shuts down. The S-band and X-band emissions disappear from the Growler's ALQ-99 receivers simultaneously. But here's what changes and what does not. What changes? The Growler no longer has a live radar signal to ride home on. What does not change? The last known position, built over 3 minutes and 50 seconds of continuous emission, is precise to within a few hundred meters. The HARM's home-on jam seeker is paired with inertial guidance for exactly this moment. The missile knows where it was pointed when the signal dropped. It remembers. The weapons release is already authorized. The firing solution is already computed. The question the Growler crew faces is whether to take the shot on the memorized bearing, hold for re-emission, or stand down and accept the kill chain as a demonstration rather than a strike. This is the decision at the center of modern electronic warfare. And it is not actually a technical question. It is a doctrinal one. Because what happens next depends entirely on what the U.S. commander wants the adversary to learn. In this scenario, the decision is made at the strike warfare coordinator level, coordinated up to the carrier strike group commander. The HARM is not fired. The weapons release is held. And at 0354, the Type 055 receives something that in some ways carries more weight than a missile. A single encrypted transmission through a third-party channel, the kind of message that in real-world naval operations is sometimes passed through diplomatic back channels or directly ship-to-ship on bridge-to-bridge frequencies. Not a threat, a demonstration. The content, paraphrased. We had a firing solution. We logged your full emission fingerprint. The lane you tried to open is closed. What's most surprising about this kind of engagement is not the technology. It's the economy of it. No missile expended, no kinetic action, no escalation trigger. And yet the Type 055's tactical objective, opening a strike lane by asserting radar dominance, has completely collapsed. The adversary knows it was seen. It knows it was targetable. And it now knows that every future emission from its sensor suite will be immediately recognizable. The strike lane does not just close. The option to repeat this maneuver closes with it. The Type 055 turns southwest. The anti-ship strike package, if it was being prepared, stands down. The E-2D Hawkeye tracks the withdrawal. The Arleigh Burke Pickett's sensor picture clears as the Type 346B stays dark. The Ford holds course. By 0420, the electronic contact has moved to the edge of the carrier strike group's sensor envelope and is holding position there, present, watchful, but no longer transmitting above passive sensor levels. The Growler is back on its racetrack orbit, ALQ-99 receivers still open, still listening. Still building the database. Here's what this tells us about the muscle mindset and the information mindset in the modern maritime environment. The Type 055 commander made a rational calculation. My radar is more powerful than your sensors. Therefore, if I transmit, I own the sensor picture. That logic works in a world where your adversary depends on active sensors to build a targeting solution. It does not work when your adversary's primary targeting sensor is your own transmission. The analogy that keeps coming back to me, imagine you are trying to hide in a dark room from someone who cannot see in the dark. The instinct is to turn on a flashlight so you can see them first. But the moment you turn on that flashlight, your position is unambiguous to everyone in the room. The person who could not see in the dark suddenly knows exactly where you are. The Growler is not the flashlight. The Growler is the person standing quietly in the corner, watching the light. One detail that stuck with me when going through the technical parameters of this engagement. The Type 346B radar, at its operational power levels, produces a detectable signal at ranges significantly beyond its own radar horizon. The Growler's ALQ-99 receivers can pick up the Type 055's radar emission from a range at which the Type 055 cannot even see the Growler on its own sensor picture. The ship that thinks it is looking out into empty space is radiating into a receiver it cannot detect. The asymmetry is not subtle. The emission fingerprint logged during those 3 minutes and 50 seconds of Type 346B operation does not get discarded after the engagement closes. It goes into a database shared across the fleet, correlated with previously logged emissions, used to build a comprehensive electronic order of battle for this class. Every frequency step, every pulse width, every scan pattern, a signature as unique as a fingerprint and permanent. The next time this hull or any hull of this class operates in contested waters and activates its radar, U.S. Navy electronic warfare assets will have immediate positive identification from the first pulse. No interrogation required. No time to think. The Type 055 announced itself tonight more completely than any intelligence collection effort could have managed. Is this a temporary pause before the next maneuver, or something more lasting? Comment below. Because this question does not have a clean answer, and the people with experience in this domain disagree. Before we close, there is one thing about the AGM-88 HARM and the home on jam concept that almost nobody outside the electronic warfare community talks about. The HARM in its basic form is an anti-radiation missile. It rides a radar's own emission home. Home on jam mode flips the logic in a way that is almost counterintuitive. In standard anti-radiation mode, the target has to be actively searching with its radar for the missile to track it. In home on jam mode, the target does not even need to be using its radar against you. The moment any emitter, a jammer, a search radar, a fire control radar, transmits at sufficient power levels in the HARM's receiver band, it becomes a valid target. The louder and more powerful the adversary's electronic warfare suite, the more attractive it is as an aim point. What the Type 055 was doing tonight was not just scanning for targets. In the language of the electronic warfare community, it was painting itself. Every watt of transmitted power was a watt that confirmed its bearing. The instinct to transmit more power when facing an adversary in the electromagnetic domain is natural. It is also, in the age of home-on-jam logic and passive receiver arrays, exactly backwards. The Type 055 went dark because it had to. Not because it was defeated kinetically. Because it was shown, clearly and without ambiguity, that the muscle play. Out-radiate everyone, assert electromagnetic dominance, blind the picket, had a mirror image. And the mirror image was a harm on the rail and a full emission fingerprint in a database that will outlive this deployment. The real question, and we're going to put this to you directly, is whether quiet wins the modern sea or whether power eventually finds a way to overwhelm the sensor game. Because the Type 055 will go dark, study what just happened, and come back with a different approach. The Growler crew knows that. The Hawkeye crew knows that. Which is why the listening never stops. Will the muscle mindset adapt fast enough to outpace the information mindset in the next 10 years? Comment YES if you think raw power finds a way, or no if the sensor war is already decided. We read every one. If you want to understand the other side of this equation, what happens when a diesel-electric submarine tries to use the ocean's own thermal layers to vanish under a U.S. carrier strike group? That breakdown is already up. Link is in the description. And if you are watching this channel for the first time, this is what we do here. Real systems, real capabilities, dramatized for clarity. Hit subscribe and you will not miss the next one.